approximately 60% of your entire body, 71% of the entire Earth, and 100% of this challenge. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about water. Today we'll see just how useful and deadly this tasteless substance can truly be as we answer the age-old question, can you play Skyrim without leaving the water? We'll be taking inspiration from a man who has challenged himself time and time again to play Skyrim to its maximum funniness, all while being region locked to a specific area. Now I myself am a huge fan of Jupe. He does a great job of explaining the challenge, attempting it without using glitches or bugs, and ultimately of showcasing just how fun it can be to limit oneself to a single location. So here's a tip of the hat to you, Jove, and if you're watching this video, haven't seen any of his content, well, I'd highly recommend giving it a go. So let's establish some ground rules of the video. First and most obvious, no leaving the water. Now you may be saying, Chance, this means you'll never be able to attack or use any items, to which I say, well, yeah, you're mostly right about that. However, there is such thing as standing ankle deep in water, which means a shallow shoreline is fine to invade as long as my toes are still covered. Now this does not extend to snow, we're strictly talking liquid water here, no loopholes. Second, the only mods that have been installed are for sheer graphics or performance. The list I'm using is called AVO, which can be found on Wabbajack or using the link in the description. Check it out if you're curious. Our goals for this run include making the complete river loop from Lake Ilinalta all the way around to the river that runs just west of Rorikstead. Secondly, I'd like to get at least one skill to rank 100, as I feel if you can level up, then you can have at least some resemblance of what the Skyrim experience has to offer. And lastly, I'd like to accrue 10,000 gold. This one just requires us to find a merchant, as well as enough loot to sell to them. But enough for introductions. It's time to dip our toes in total mayhem, make a big splash in Skyrim, and wade through this challenge like an absolute legend. Side note, there will be a lot of water jokes throughout this video, and don't worry if you miss them. I understand some people have dry humor. However, if you wish to master the waves and find all of my corny, ill-placed buoys of bad puns and water references, I encourage you to count them as we go, and get a total number at the end, and you can comment it below. We'll be playing as an Argonian, as this is the obvious choice for this challenge. They're the closest thing to a fish race in Skyrim, can actually breathe underwater, and deal a little extra damage with their fists, which is gonna come in handy because I'm not sure when we'll be able to score a weapon. Now we'll be diving straight into the wet and wild world of Skyrim, immediately following choosing our standing stone. I mean, it's literally on the way to the water, so why not? Next up is to begin exploring Lake Ilinalta. Now, there are slaughterfish in this lake, so in order to deal with them, we'll need to first find a shallow shore that provides water, as well as a place to punch some pretend piranhas. Following this, we find ourselves a fishing pole. However, it's pretty useless as the only spots to fish are actually on land. Didn't really think that one through.
Total noob. Classic noob.
Nonetheless, we continued on around the lake and eventually came upon a lumber mill. Now, the mill itself wasn't all too interesting. However, the bridge that crosses to get to the mill contained a hidden chest up underneath it. This chest contained some ebony ingots as well as other goodies. Not sure how we'll make use of this yet, but I'm sure we'll find a way. Anyways, the rest of the lake was pretty much the same. I mean, occasionally I'd find a pair of wolves or mud crabs along the shoreline, but other than that, not too much to talk about here. On my way out of the lake, I did come upon a little sunken John boat, but it only had 2 skeletons and 6 septums, so pretty much the saddest treasure ever. Nonetheless, the first major body of water had been dealt with, and I was feeling very prepared to complete this challenge. So on down we swam to relish in sweet Riverwood. Now this was the first city we were actually able to interact with somebody real and not just a random fisherman NPC. And that person was none other than...
Don't set anything on fire, alright?
Faendal. Yep, everyone's favorite wood elf. The man's so Chad-like he can't even win his girl in a fair battle of words, and he can't face his mortal enemy Sven down. And, you know, I did try several times to get to Alvor as he was smithing, but the bastard built his shop just about 10 inches too high for me. So all my hopes and dreams were pretty much out the door. I chopped it up to some usual Nord racism. I mean, you don't see landwalkers having to climb a wall just to shop, right? Next it was slaying a couple more wolves and riding the rapids of White River down to the Whiterun Conjunction. I tried swimming up the waterfall as well, just to see if there was ever a possibility of me returning, and yeah, no, that wasn't happening. That water is strong and I am weak. So, after running over and getting as close to Whiterun as I'll ever get, I was headed back down the river to discover a lucky location with a chest just out of reach. This will definitely be one of the most annoying parts of this challenge, as we will often see things just out of reach with unknown treasures just waiting to be found. However, we just kind of got to pass by them. Floating on down, we ran into an Imperial courier, who we swiftly slay in order to get our first real set of armor, as well as access to a bow. Now this will be important, as not long thereafter we arrived upon the Windhelm towers. There we sniped a couple of bandits with our newfound bow, and took the rest out on foot. This was some good loot, and I was able to stock up on arrows for future fights. After this came a portion that tried my patience to no end. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the behemoth of waterfalls, the Mac Daddy of moving water down a dangerous drop, and the reason I spent 30 minutes dying almost constantly. Now, tossing yourself down a waterfall isn't exactly an art, however when it comes to falling 60 feet safely, I think there is some strategy that goes into it. Now I finally found a safe path down, but it did combine equal parts of falling and leveling up once we hit a rock or two, so that way we could preserve some health and, you know, not die on final impact. Following this, we passed by an old shack with the ironic name of being lucky, however half of it was being carried away by the river, so I guess all their luck had run out long before my arrival. North down a couple more rapids, and finally we were swimming our way straight up to Windhelm. It wasn't all too much for us to do around the city docks, however we did manage to get close enough to the captain that carries you to Solstheim, so I guess technically we could try that DLC, but you know, perhaps we'll save that for a future date. Swimming out past Windhelm, we finally reached the ocean, and this is where things really start to open up, as we no longer have a river constantly pushing us in one direction, nor do we have only 20 feet of exploration in between us and, well, land. This ice cube-filled body of water certainly seems like it will contain a lot of goodies. However, after many hours spent exploring, I can confirm it's like 90% ice and water, 7% exciting interactables that we couldn't reach due to being waterlocked, and 3% of actual stuff to do or things to interact with. We did manage to find some sunken ships, of course, and these usually contained 1 or 2 chests, which always had disappointing loot. I expected somewhere along my water-soaked journey to find at least 1 rare item or super good weapon or armor piece, but alas, this ocean was severely lacking in excitement. I could have hugged the shoreline all the way around on my journey. I really wanted to explore the open ocean, even if I did fall asleep a few times while just swimming across it. Nonetheless, we made the trek across the Sea of Ghosts, rounding north the Mage's College, almost getting close enough to pray to Talos, and exploring a marooned ship, we finally made our way down into Dawnstar. There I was determined to find a shopkeeper I could interact with and get to selling my stuff.
Are you feeling sick?
But after realizing the shoreline was always too far away, I swam away with my head held low in shame. Most of the journey across the north was spent fighting horkers and small bands of wolves that I could find on an island here or there. And this gave me the idea that this was the perfect place to start training up on one of my skills. If I want to reach level 100 in a skill, the easiest 2 for me to raise will be sneaking and blocking, as these don't really require me to find more enemies every 5 seconds. With that in mind, I equipped the iconic Iron Shield and got to blocking and healing for several hours straight. Finally making our way down into the swampland just north of Morthal, I began to be reinvigorated with the challenge. I mean, this area has tons of water-hugging small islands, so it provides pretty much a constant supply of battles, and with the water being so shallow, I can finally run around almost like I'm actually free for once. The enemies here consisted of spiders, slaughterfish, and mud crabs, all of which were fairly easy to deal with and provided extremely boring and useless loot. And so, after trudging through tons of muggy marshes, we finally made our way down to Morthal, where once again my hopes of interacting with a shop were thwarted by a simple distance formula, Me plus water equals too far from shops. With this defeat, I scurried inland from Morthal, hoping to find something worth mentioning in this video, so I could actually say, it wasn't only a resourceful journey, but a fun one. And lo and behold, that's exactly what I did. Now, I'm no expert of Skyrim, that's for sure, but I have played it since its initial release date 12 years ago. And in this time, I can't remember ever facing a Charis in the open world. They've always been near the Falmer, deep in the Dwemer ruins. However, just east of Morthal lies a slightly sunken ruin by the name of Mirrorwatch. Outside of this ruined castle are several enemies, one of which being a single Charis ready to hurl deadly acid at you and chomp you to pieces with its razor-sharp mandibles. Now, I won't lie, this greatly intrigued me, and for once in the series, I was severely tempted to stray off course and go and explore that dungeon. I mean, what kind of goodies and secret backstory must be in such a creepy and hidden away place? I guess we'll just have to find out in one of our other Skyrim adventures. Maybe one that includes day numbers and a handsome high elf. Go watch my 25 days of modded Skyrim if you haven't. Anyways, for us, this is where our journey and excitement with these ruins ends, as it's time to get back to our river march. Coming out of Morthal, we first tried to go south, however we were immediately greeted with a waterfall just too high to climb, and so I guess by factor of elimination, we were to head west out of the swamp. There we did manage to find the Apprentice Stone, which will be the only standing stone we are ever able to fully reach.
What a noob.
From there, we met up with the Great Solitude docking area. Widely known for its ties with the East Empire Company, this was definitely the most beautiful dock we had the pleasure of visiting. But just like all my interactions with NPCs in this playthrough, the dialogue options were extremely limited. Following another heartbreaking letdown of human interaction, we traveled south just past the Solitude lumber mill to discover two more waterfalls blocking the river path. One lying directly south of the mill, and the other lying just beyond Dragon Bridge. These two were very disappointing discoveries as it marked the end of our reach with river access. Unsatisfied with the results of our river run down into the reach, I decided to focus in on leveling up my blocking. And after several more blocks of mud crab pinches and a little bandit encounter, we finally had level 100. I'm not gonna lie, I got most of it up off the Horkers and the Wolves in the frozen Arctic, but I figured finishing it out in a real fight would feel much better. And it did feel good to actually achieve one of our goals for this challenge, and made the whole effort feel a little more like base Skyrim. Maybe this is all we need in life, just level up our basic combat skills and float around all day, looking at wannabe walruses. Nah, that can't be it. So we set off north of Solitude, hoping that the last remaining shoreline would surely bring more excitement than the otherwise calm journey. And sure enough, it did. Up here we did manage to find a large saber cat guarding a cave I was certain that we would be able to reach, but of course, as per the usual, we couldn't. But it did also have a bandit camp set up in a shipwreck, and these were always fun and wholesome interactions. Almost feels like the real life Skyrim, except, land is lava, and you have to lure every enemy you face into reach if you want to be able to actually loot them. We also attempted swimming out to Castle Volkir, which we were successful at. Now, this pretty much amazed me, as yes, you generally think if you see it in Skyrim you can go there. However, I figured with this being a DLC portion, you'd have to actually take the John boat from back on the mainland. Now, while we were out here, there wasn't too much excitement. However, there was a few new enemies to face, but most of them were too far away to reach. So as per the usual, I just swam away and called it another day. Now, if you'll recall our initial 3 goals, we wanted to complete the river loop of Skyrim, which would include the rivers that run down by Markarth and over by Rorikstead. However, due to 3 ill-placed waterfalls, that won't be possible. So unfortunately, our first mission is a failure. But we did manage to swim all the way to a DLC island, so perhaps that makes up for that failure, just a little bit. Next up, we wanted to get at least 1 skill to level 100, which we did manage to do. Took an unbearable amount of time and countless hours of watching Skyrim content as my shield got bashed into oblivion, but we did accomplish this goal, so that feels good, And last but not least, we wanted to amass 10,000 gold. Now, when I set this goal, I imagined I would find a merchant somewhere along my journey, and it would become a cool scavenger hunt for a little while, as I found different odds and ends to sell to eventually get us to that target amount. However, we ended up spending the entire adventure just looking for a merchant in the first place. Unsuccessful, obviously, so we're left with a measly couple hundred septims to our name and but a single question left to answer. Can you play Skyrim without leaving the water? Yes. And honestly, if you're just looking to sightsee and level up a couple basic skills, it's a journey I'd recommend to any Skyrim veteran or new player just looking to learn more about the world and really take in the sights. You know, not just the big fancy castle shots, but also the lesser known ones. However, I would recommend adding a mod or two that perhaps enhances the underwater experience. And I'm not just talking about graphics, I'm sure there are some out there to add either more enemies or perhaps some more loot to the otherwise lackluster ocean and river floors. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. It's completely free and will give you an update whenever I release more content. And if you really want to show some support, perhaps share it out with a friend or family, or a friend's family, maybe a family friend. Either way, as per the usual, I do hope you all stay safe, stay awesome, and stay crafting. Until next time, peace out.